Hello, everybody. It's lovely to see you all. In fact, I can't see anybody, but I assume that you're all out there.
Millions of them, millions
of people joining us. This is the first of what's going to be many LGB Alliance Presents. And so we thought we'd start off with something completely impromptu at the beginning of Pride Month. Malcolm, why do we have a Pride Month?
Don't blame me. I don't know why you're asking me. I had nothing to do with it. Honest Gov. No, I mean, remember when there used to be one day of Pride a year, and that seemed to be enough?
And then, of course, it was Gay Pride, wasn't it?
Of course, but it was also in one city, usually, I mean, at the beginning, and then it was every city, and that was fine. And then it's every day for a fucking month. I mean, it's ludicrous. And of course, I remember, I'm sure you remember, you were, it's hard to believe, but you're even older than I am. And you went to the first Pride, but the Prides that I went to in the 80s and 90s, there weren't corporations virtue signaling, and the Metropolitan Police were trying to stop it, not a huge stall.
That's exactly right. I mean, the first demonstration we went on when I was the spokesperson for Gay Liberation in November 1870, that I said to the Times, I said, it's important to know that we're not ashamed to be homosexual. That was the thing that we said then, and that we have to say again now. But that was about the police setting up gay men, wasn't it? And trying to trap them.
Yeah.
It was about entrapment, and it was just terrible. It was only a few years after. I mean, it's hard to think. I think today's generation can hardly imagine what it was like for gay men in particular.
Traveling down from Glasgow to go on my first Pride, and the cops on a line, and you were singing 2, 4, 6, 8. Is your sergeant really straight? And we thought, really, you would have been surprised if you'd got nicked, because that was the tenor of the Pride then. But now, I mean, I don't know if you saw Peter Tatchell sort of collaring the West Midlands Chief Constable in Birmingham.
Incredible,
right?
Yeah.
And they're marching together, and the West Midlands Chief Constable's got some like Hawaiian style rainbow thing. And you thought, well, what happened to the days when it was radical and it was different?
But it isn't about the same thing, is it? I mean, when we were marching in 1970, what we were marching about was the coming out as gay, coming out as being people who were not straight, but who were attracted to people of the same sex. And it was just incredible. The people lined the sides of the road, and you saw the signs of disgust, the shock and the disgust on the faces of the people standing, walking. These people, we expected them to be hidden away. They're either evil or they're sick or whatever it is they thought that we were. And we were out there, and we were proud. And for us, I think, being proud then at the beginning was the opposite of being ashamed. We were showing we're not ashamed of anything. We are proud of the fact that we are out and here, and we're just going to show you that we are gay and lesbian, and we're just like you. So we were the kind of, I suppose, the assimilationist side of the gay liberation.
Now, Pride feels like a more aggressive statement, because we don't need to be proud anymore. I mean, okay, keep the name, but we're so accepted as gay people that saying we are proud feels a little bit redundant. But it's now moved to sort of, when we say, or when marches say we are proud, it's almost like daring people to say anything against it. I mean, I saw you sent me a link to that Scottish hospital where they're talking about having a pride march through the hospital grounds. And that's like, I mean, it's really sort of daring people to even disagree. It really feels like it's morphed into something that is being used, the whole pride idea is being used to silence other people, daring them to criticize, which is a completely different vibe.
Yeah, it's a very different vibe. I mean, at the beginning, we had a political component, which was we stand for change. We want gay people to have equal rights in society. And the more conservative element of the gay rights movement wanted gay marriage, and the more radical side said no, we don't want gay marriage because that's just one of those straight institutions. We don't want to be like that. That's imitating the straights. It's imitating the establishment, and it's so funny now that people have completely forgotten that. And if you criticize gay marriage now, you get comments like, "Oh, you're homophobic," whereas it was the most radical people in the gay rights movement who were opposed it.
Stonewall was against gay marriage for years.
Yeah, they had to be dragged into it. Oh, Dennis is here, and what's Dennis got to say? Let's have a look. He says, if 20 women meet up, they're met with balaclava-clad losers opposing their free speech. And this isn't political assembly, it's a grotesque power flicks. And also, I mean, at the beginning, I remember so clearly at the beginning of gay liberation that we said, we have to pursue our struggle together with women's liberation.
Yeah. And the early gay movement very obviously and explicitly said it was learning from women's rights and the civil rights struggle. And to then take all that heritage and then trash it by being misogynistic that's the work that I think the question you asked earlier on was, is there anything to be proud of? That's definitely something not to be proud of, that the link between women and lesbians and gays.
But the misogyny was there. I remember at the second meeting. So in the first meeting of Gay Lib, there were 20 people, 19 men and me. And the second meeting, there were around 100 people. And
How many trans people were there?
There weren't any trans people there. No, I'm sorry, but they did come along a couple of years later. But no, they weren't. But there were 4 or 5 women in the second meeting, so about 95 men and about 5 women, something like that. And someone said we should invite women's liberation. A man said we should invite women's liberation, and another man said yes, they can bring sandwiches and coffee. And that remark has stayed with me my whole life as, yes, there is within within gay men that there are some misogynists. And I don't know if it's the majority or whether it's how. What do you think about that?
Isn't that just, it seems to me assuming that women would do the tea and the coffee is less misogynistic than the things that get said now. That's like old-fashioned male chauvinism.
Well, that's true. Breaking into your house and just taking one item is not quite as bad as trashing the place. But it was clearly misogynistic, and there's always been part of the gay men's movement which has been misogynistic. I think you'd agree with that, wouldn't you?
Oh no.
And the point is,
obviously, you saw that a lot in the 80s and 90s, and then it felt as if. Well, maybe that's because I wasn't seeing it so much because I stopped going to Pride as often. But there was always tension, and in a way there would always be, because gay men and lesbians don't have to socialize in the way that straight women and straight men have to socialize, because they have to meet each other. And so some sort of, even though there's misogyny there, obviously, and domestic violence and any of the other downsides of that, an accord has to be made between the two groups. Whereas gay men and lesbians could cheerfully go on parallel paths and not have to interact if they didn't need to. But we had to when you were building the Gay Liberation Front.
Well, no, we didn't have to, because most lesbians actually chose to. That's why there were so few lesbians in Gay Lib. Most lesbians chose to work within the women's liberation movement. And work separately. The lesbian separatists were a much bigger crowd than the lesbians who chose, like me and like Mary McIntosh, to work within Gay Lib. It was actually quite uncommon, because they had a sense, and I think this is, of course, one of the things that that LGB Alliance always says, that we one of our things is the dual oppression of lesbians as women and as homosexuals, and I think so many gay men don't get that.
I've never got it. I don't know what you're going on about.
Hey, lots of people are asking us about the commercialization aspect of it.
Yeah.
So,
no,
you can't see it. Well, so Frank is saying that Pride these days is driven by money, big pharma. Good job they haven't applied those principles in other areas of our life. Well,
is it? But I mean, in a way, I mean, in the 80s, in the 90s, if you'd said in 20, 30 years' time, big financial firms and all the big brands will want to be associated, we'd have said, wow, that's a great idea. We just didn't realize that it would then be used, these brands, to enforce a very narrow niche version of LGBT rights, i.e. gender identity. And that's where it feels
but that's not the only problem. The problem is that they're accepting money from corporations that are actually aligned with countries that are homophobic and are doing terrible.
But I'm saying, I don't think we can say any corporate branding or any corporate support is evil, period. There's nothing wrong with corporations wanting to show some support. What's annoying is they show the support, but then they take a stance, which they haven't checked with anybody. They haven't they haven't taken a poll of lesbians and gays or even trans people, but they're enforcing, like Google or the police or the NHS, they're enforcing this narrow version. And so you've now got corporations actually telling us what gay rights are, which is ludicrous.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that I agree that I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with all these corporations funding Pride and with these sort of marching along as if, what do they stand for? I suppose that is what you're saying. What do they stand for? What do they think they're supporting? What are they supporting?
I'm trying to think what was the company? Oh God, I mean, there's so many of them that took a stand. Was it Wix? That's right. It was one of the Pride marches. Wix took a supplier of DIY equipment, and I'm not talking about dildos. They had a big stall and truck and all the rest of it, and they were all about no LGB without the T.
Yeah.
Where did you get the idea that you could get involved in a debate that has nothing to do with you and then spend money to put that message in the heart of the Pride parade? I just thought that was absurd, and they didn't back down. And you've got HSBC. We've talked about it before. They've got the appalling links with financially corrupt sort of behaviour. They funded. So they had to pay, was it 800 million in a fine because they funded some of the Sinaloa, I think it is one of the cartels in Mexico. I
think it must have been. It's a really important moment. The moment at which it changed from gay pride, which was the sense that we're not ashamed. We are perfectly proud and of the way we are. We will go out into the streets and encourage other gays and lesbians to come out into the streets and be. But in the UK anyway, I think it happened in the States earlier. But around 1997, 1998, you get this subtle shift. Instead of it being gay pride or gay and lesbian pride, which it often was through the 70s and the 80s, you get it suddenly called pride. And then what does it mean? And then you suddenly get this proliferation. You suddenly get the plus. I don't know when the plus.
You were up against Tatchell on Talk TV 2 nights ago, and he barefaced lied that, essentially saying that, there might have been a couple of transsexuals involved in the early days of Pride in this country, but the idea that they took a leading role. And I went through Peter Tatchell's own archive that he put up in his foundation website, and I went through and looked at all the photographs of the LGBT Pride marches. And as you say, it's around about the end of the 90s. Suddenly there's no more gay pride. Yeah. And all the placards that used to say lesbian and gay pride or gay pride suddenly become queer or LGBT, but only very slowly. And then, of course, at the millennium, it becomes common.
But I think the rewriting of history is incredibly irritating, and also the hypocrisy. You may remember at the end of that segment, I was cut off, but I said to Peter, "Have you read this book by Stuart Feather, Blowing the Lid?" It's Blowing the Lid. It's called. It's much better than Lisa Power's book. It's blowing.
It wouldn't be hard though, would it?
Well, not very hard, but anyway, Blowing the Lid. It's a bit rambling, but it's quite interesting. He dares to think. At least he did then. This book was published, I think, 2015 or something. And one of Peter's set pieces is how there were so many transsexuals active in gay liberation, and it's very funny because Stuart Feather is one of the two men, together with Andrew Lumsden. Also, they're both in their way into their 70s now, who stood outside LGB Alliance conference in 2021, draped in funny black garbs like a sort of droopy Darth Vader that's been through the washing machine, and they were doing a weep-in for trans people because we were having our conference. And Stuart Feather actually wrote a book about gay liberation in which he's got quite a harsh chapter. I mean this book, yes, this book.
Just keeping the narrative clear.
No, I mean, he is so scathing about the role of the transsexuals in gay lib. It's just unbelievable. He says, we have Pollock, this is Rachel Pollock, who was actually a friend of mine in the 1970s, a good friend, she's just recently died, telling women they must say to the transsexuals, come out, you're one of us. When the women have decided otherwise, it appears that the only role transsexuals are going to allow lesbians and gay men to play is that of handmaidens to the transsexuals' own coming out. That is what Stuart Feather wrote. It's pretty transphobic. And now he's accusing us.
But he was one of the founders as well?
Well, he wasn't a founder, but he was involved quite early on. And now he's all sort of pretending. I mean, I think he assumes that no one has read his book. Clearly, no one has. Because
you may have doubled the readership.
I think I have. Well,
they're all rewriting history, aren't they? I mean, it's ludicrous because if you go back and look at any of the evidence, the transsexual sort of contribution is zilch. Other than to trans rights, of course, they focused on trans rights, so they should, but they had nothing to do with building the gay rights movement. I mean, look at what Fred says about all the bonkers people that keep getting roped into the history of the American Pride movement.
So Malcolm's talking about American Pride, which was founded by Fred Sargent and Craig Rodwell and Ellen Brody and her partner, two lesbians and two gay men. And the amount of rubbish that is talked about the origins of the gay pride in America is just astonishing. And Fred Sargent tries again and again to get people to actually read books about it, but they don't want to read books. They just want.
Would you go on a pride march?
I would never go on a pride march. I mean, I live in Amsterdam, and a few years ago, I just remember going down because you get this canal trip, all these boats and this parade through the canals, and just looking at it and thinking, I have nothing to do with this. This is just zero to do with my life, as and. So
a lot of gay men go on it because there's lots of cute guys, for eye candy. And so, I mean, I confess I might wander into a pride march just for eye candy. But, I mean, I haven't been on one for some time. I remember the last one I had gone on a couple when they were in Soho because I was there and it was easy. But the last one that I really went on seriously was the one where it was in Brockwell Park. Can't remember which year. And I turned up in Brixton in the tube, and there were these guys who were out of the boxes with next to nothing on, and they were dancing around in front of these black families who had God knows where they'd been with kids and everything. And I just thought, what's the difference between pride and I hate using the word flaunting because that's what people used to say about gay pride in the past. But it's a sort of deliberate provocation of you will like what you are seeing. And people in a democracy have to accept that other people have different views, and we don't get to sort of tell other people and families, like pups, this whole crap about these guys on all fours with the masks on.
With little children. And of course, if you complain about that, people say you're prudish. If you complain about drag queen story time, people think you're against drag. I always used to enjoy drag shows. I mean, what's wrong with drag shows? They are adult entertainment.
And nobody's campaigning against people dressing up as pups. I mean, if they want to dress up as pups, do it, but just don't do it in the street and seem to.
Yeah, but that people say that's you're being prudish. Why shouldn't they dress? But that is ridiculous. It's as if all barriers have to be broken down, and all barriers. Anybody who defends the idea that there's a difference between what adults want to see and what children should see is social conservative. You're just like Mary Whitehouse. You're like Alita Bryant. You're one of those people. Whereas there is a difference between what children what they should see and what adults see.
Because I mean, I suppose that the core idea of Pride was that you were going out on the street to let other people see that there were gay people that looked just like them.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to.
Yeah, well, they don't look like anybody now. Now they don't.
Unless the other people are pups as well, in which case they do look like them.
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly the point, isn't it? So that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to show we were just like everyone else. Whereas now, most of the people who take part in Pride these days seem to want to show that they are precisely different from the normies. They're not like the normies. No, they're going to be, showing their buttocks at everybody or wearing gigantic dildos, as if that is that. And if that is Pride, that is worthless. I think that is worthless. It's worse than worthless. Yeah, it's worse than worthless. It is really harming us. It's harming
one of the things that I think we all agree on LGB Alliance is that we fear there's a growing backlash. We get blamed for the backlash. No, sorry, it's not us that's doing the backlash. The average person looks at stuff like that and they don't say anything, but they lodge away in their heads and they think, these fucking freaks. And
I mean, if you look in America, you think Pete Buttigieg, he gets a lot of flack because he's not gay enough, because he's just a perfectly regular guy married to another perfectly regular guy. That is boring. That's not really gay. It's not queer. It's just a man married to another man. That's not really queer. And this whole word queer has now been kind of appropriated. It's really just a horrible slur, and it's been appropriated to mean edgy and exciting and then, so what they've really got in America is the really good LGBT QIA plus two whatever spirit thing.
Don't forget the two spirits.
I got the two spirits. I got the two spirits. Both spirits I got. Did you see? That was there was this elder Native American the other day saying the whole two spirit thing is complete hogwash. Really? Anyway, so yeah, absolutely, complete hogwash. Yeah, but anyway, so your archetypal real LGBTQIA plus two spirit person is Rachel Levine, who is probably the person most responsible in America for doing harm to teenagers.
And also, look, I mean, if you're talking about image, I mean,
I don't know if everybody knows who Rachel Levine is. What?
The most regressive image you can imagine, that sort of, the sort of the skirt and the pearls and everything, because he has to dress like that in order to be a woman.
I just explain, just in case there's anyone who doesn't know who Rachel Levine is. Rachel Levine is a 4-star admiral, right? Was in the Marines.
He's never been on a boat in his life, I don't think.
Oh, really? How did you get to be an admiral?
They made him a 4-star admiral. He's just a medic.
Really? I thought he was in the Marines. Was he not in the Marines? Oh, anyway.
The idea that Rachel Levine is in the Marines. She wishes she was in the Marines.
I didn't know he could get. I want to be an admiral. Anyway. Yeah. Well, anyway, so Rachel Levine, who transitioned in some respect or other,
title.
Having loads of kids and having lived as a man for God knows how many decades, is now the Assistant Secretary of Health, and is really responsible for promulgating all kinds of disinformation about child transition. It's really, really a dangerous, powerful position, and was recently referred to as the most powerful lesbian in America. And I had 10 minutes of really quite painful silence at that point. I thought, what are we talking about here? What has happened to America?
That fantastic picture. Remember who's a freak, the nuclear, I shouldn't say the word freak, but he is a freak.
No, shouldn't. He didn't say that. No, just strike that out, you know. Yeah. Oh, I should tell you that, you know, we've got Menno lurking in the background here, we forgot to tell him. Menno is here. He's watching us. He's keeping a watchful eye to make sure that we don't do anything wrong. So if anybody says anything wrong, like Malcolm just said, he'll just scratch it from the record.
Remember the fantastic picture. The Americans were celebrating, it was for Bastille Day, and they sent their two most eminent, fantastic diplomats to Paris, and they sent Rachel Levine, pearls, tweed, and that guy Sam, what's his face, the one that was.
Oh no, the kleptomaniac! You're kidding?
Yes, the kleptomaniac, allegedly kleptomaniac, who nicked all of the stuff of these women, the luggage, and these two freaks are in this picture with the American and the French flag. And I mean, honestly,
but don't you think, I mean, the damage that this is doing? I mean, we built up the reputation of the gay rights movement over decades on the basis of mutual trust, of the basis of talking to people that we disagreed with, even talking to religious people who had all sorts of homophobic ideas.
Seriously, child safeguarding, we take it seriously.
We take it seriously, and it is important. And any gay rights movement that doesn't realize how important safeguarding is, I mean, that is just really shocking. It's the mistakes of the past are being repeated right in front of our eyes now, and we need to make it clear. And you know, every time we try to emphasize how important child safeguarding is, this social conservatives, you must be right wing. It's just so dangerous, this kind of rhetoric. Let's have a look and see.
I'm not going to say anything more about Peter Tatchell, except I'm not sure he would agree with you on the importance of child safeguarding being at the center of the gay movement.
Yeah, well, I think we know that. And what is so upsetting is that everybody knows that, and yet he's invited on again and again and again to talk about things, to talk about women's rights, for instance. It's and to explain what lesbians are and what lesbians. I mean, to me, you know, he's explaining that most lesbians this and that, and I'm saying, Peter, actually, you know, you're wrong, and he's completely unable to hear it. Doesn't want to hear it. Let's have a look and see what other things that people are saying to us. Do make your comments, everybody. It's always interesting to hear what people are saying.
Any horrible comments yet? Have we been compared to the KKK yet?
I don't. Dennis says you wrote. I think this must be from way back. So I'm just. I'm not sure what Dennis was referring to when he says that you wrote a letter about something that they never answered. I'm afraid I don't know what that's about. So Dennis, if you want to make that comment again, perhaps you could explain what you're talking about, because we've moved on.
Yes, we've moved on.
We've moved on. And Stephen here says that pride is just all PR and the guise of activism. It means nothing and they stand for nothing. It's embarrassing watching a community I loved for so long become infantilized. I think that's a really good word, isn't it? Yeah. Infantilized by global conglomerates. It is.
Talking about child safeguarding. So it's a terrible mix that the movement itself has been infantilized, and also it doesn't take actual infants and their child safeguarding seriously. And then the other main claim, the main platform for the gay or the LGBT movement is puberty blockers, which infantilizes adolescents. It's a toxic mix. And when the public finally clock, as they're beginning to, then I mean, we're in big trouble as a community.
It's interesting. Somebody brings up this episode of Schofield, and on that same evening that I was on with Tatchell, they spent 20 minutes talking about Schofield, and then 20 minutes talking about this huge issue, which is affecting thousands and thousands of lesbians and young gay men, and as if these things were equivalent. And of course, I mean, I'm not.
I think the Schofield issue is. I mean, in a funny way, it's the real irony is that they dealt with Schofield for 20 minutes and then they interviewed Peter Tatchell for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the real irony.
Yeah.
But apart from all that, I mean, Schofield is really interesting because he talk about pride, he did this big boo-hoo coming out. And I tend to think there are so many of these older guys who come out late in life, crisp and blunt and the like, who didn't go to any of these pride marches when they were 20 or 30. They come out like a sudden chrysalis, exploding into a butterfly at the age of 45. They've had no connection with gay people before that, except the odd rent boy or something. I didn't say crisp and blunt had a rent boy. I'm just saying generally they have no connection with the community. And then they start to dictate to the community what gay rights is.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't call it gay rights. Of course, you're not allowed to say gay anymore. You have to say, well, you know, an LGBT person. Who is an LGBTQ person? I've never met an LGBTQ person. What on earth is it supposed to mean? Why do they talk like this? Why do they talk like this? What's ridiculous?
Schofield came out as gay suddenly. We don't know. He said, what was it? He said, there's no reason, nobody else involved. I'm coming out. Now it transpires that the Daily Mail was investigating for years about this young guy that he had a relationship with, suddenly exploded, and the media, other than the Daily Mail, did absolutely no investigation. Nobody thought, it's a bit strange he's suddenly come out. ITV have now admitted they gave the boy a payment. So there's something is going to drop there, and I think the Schofield story is actually important. Is going to become more and more important.
Well, it's emblematic of something,
yes.
but I mean, I'm talking about something that there is an imbalance, isn't there? About talking about a particular case of unpleasant exploitation, and how that is, and I beg your pardon, alleged exploitation, and a huge movement, which is actually, you know, transing the gay away. I mean, which is we are watching now, the medical scandal that we're not allowed to, we're not supposed to talk about.
These stories of individuals, people can really. It's why the royal family. So you know, these royal stories are so big. You can really understand it from one person and their moral dilemmas and the things they do wrong. Whereas transing away the gay is all these big, complicated issues that people just can't get their heads around.
Well, they can't get their heads around because everything on TV is in like, I mean, I'm very conscious when I go on TV. I've got 3 minutes, which is why I talk so fast. And I try to get everything in 3 minutes, and I talk about 6 different subjects. And then, you know, and then this idiot says, well, you've touched on lots of things there, and it was all very boring.
No, I think the average person is going to understand these issues more clearly by the stories of individuals and celebrities of individuals, and that sort of whole hubris of Schofield and the rise and fall is just it's Shakespearean. It's brilliant. It's an amazing story. And now he's don't, I might kill myself. Oh, shut up, Schofield, you stupid man. I mean,
but you shouldn't say that. I mean, you know, suppose.
No, I have absolutely no sympathy with that guy. Did you see the interview you had this morning where people want me to kill myself? I mean, how could you use that rhetoric to try to distract from the fact that you are accused of being a nonce, allegedly accused of being, and you lied consistently, and you've had to be fired, and then suddenly it's a bit like the LGBTQ community constantly using suicide as this big sort of way to distract attention and to deflect criticism. You're not supposed to do that. I mean, the rules in the media are you're not supposed to talk about suicide.
I think that's a long, long time ago. I mean, even unfortunately,
rules,
even the Samaritans have captured. They don't follow their own rules anymore. They will not. I mean, obviously, if the Samaritans still followed their rules, which is you're not supposed to talk about suicide, you're certainly not supposed to use it in the way it's being used to sensationalize and possibly, you know, encourage copycat acts. This wouldn't be happening. They won't come out and condemn it. They won't come out and condemn it because they're captured. Richard Columbell is saying, I can't remember when gay pride became pride, but as in the UK, I think it was the late 1990s, and it was gay and lesbian pride, I think, throughout the 1970s and certainly and the 80s. Maybe it was lesbian and gay pride. I don't know.
I think the lesbians made sure it was lesbian and gay pride.
But why on earth? How did they ever decide How did they ever decide they needed a whole month of it? And I mean, it doesn't really seem they need a whole month. They need the whole year. They never stop. It's just
the trans rights movement do have the trans rights movement have the whole year. Trans Day of Visibility, Trans Day of something or other, Trans Month of something or other. We've got 1 month, I suppose. I mean, is there any other community that gets a full month? I mean, did the disabled get a month?
I know
people disabled even.
Whenever I hear, the most vulnerable people in society, I think of refugees with no family members in the most dire circumstances, or with no money, I think with people with disabilities on far too low income, without any way of getting out into the street. Or very old people who don't know anybody and are just sitting at home in complete isolation. There are so many vulnerable groups in society. How on earth? Who decided that people who feel that they were trapped in the wrong body, which is a phrase that doesn't really make any sense?
I remember on various occasions when I was in the Labour Party, and I'm not in the Labour Party now, because it doesn't know what a woman is. But I was in the Labour Party, and I would go and leaflet for elections, and you'd go around the states, and you really saw, oh, that's what they mean by poverty, and it's so disconnected from the lives of ordinary working class people, black, white, gay, straight, or whatever.
Well, do you think this whole thing is basically an elitist movement?
Absolutely, isn't it?
Well, I think so. I mean, when I speak to young people who are working class, who haven't been to university, and I explain, what's going on, they look at me and they laugh, just the same way that older people do. It seems to be university people who've gone to university, young people who've gone to university, who have drunk, I suppose I have to say, drunk the Kool-Aid. And it's not very polite, but that's
Scotland, where the same rhetoric is used, that it's the most vulnerable people are LGBT, and in particular trans people. And then speaking to somebody who works for a drugs charity, and I think it's in Glasgow, there's 40,000 registered addicts in Glasgow, and there are 28 beds for rehab, 28 for 44,000 people. But because the people who are addicts or whatever, they're not perhaps the most, able to push for their rights, to lobby MPs and MSPs, and so you would think that what would happen was that the Scottish administration, the Scottish political elite would recognise that that's a problem and do that work, but they don't. Instead, they just want a virtue signal about the LGBT and go to pride marches and sort of show that they're made of the right stuff. I mean, it's just appalling.
Here's somebody who says, I came out in 1998 and have never been to Pride, all due to living in the USA and seeing nothing but kink on display when the Pride parades and other Pride events were covered on TV. I don't have any particular opinion about kink, but I don't understand what the aim is of displaying kink in the streets. It doesn't make any sense to me. It certainly isn't a way to achieve a better position for gays and lesbians, and not even for trans people or what all the other letters are.
You were talking about the difference between the assimilationists and whatever the alternative to
well, the others are the liberationists. And I mean, what the assimilationists are people who want to show, okay, so gay people are just like you. Gays and lesbians are just like straight people. It's just that we're gay, we're attracted to people of the same sex, And the liberationists want to break barriers down. They want to push through and break barriers down. And a friend I was talking to the other day, who was active in the gay rights movement of the 1990s, he says, after same-sex marriage was achieved, all the assimilationists thought, okay, well, we've done that, we've achieved that. They left, and leaving the liberationists, who then burnt the house down. And I think that's what we're seeing now. It's burning the house down that we built for decades. And they're burning it down and alienating people and really doing profound harm to the gay rights movement.
If your shtick, which is what you call them the liberationists, maybe the extremists, who knows what they would be called, but they're definitely influenced by that whole queer theory nonsense that you have to push the boundaries. The problem is that once you've pushed a boundary, if your shtick is to push boundaries, then you've got no option but to push another boundary, and then another boundary. And so that's kink, and then it's pups, and then it's bare arses, and then it's whatever else it is. But every time they're not happy unless they're shocking and provoking and pushing the boundaries. And there comes a point when society says, no, that's quite enough boundaries, thank you very much.
Yeah, and of course, the whole thing about inclusion and exclusionary. Homosexuality, sorry, is exclusionary. You're excluding people of the opposite sex, and that's okay, because that is what homosexuality is about. It's what heterosexuality is about also, actually. It isn't inclusive.
I've tried a couple of times to say to straight men, you're being exclusionary.
Yeah.
It doesn't go down very well.
It's the whole idea of inclusive. It's bounded about as something that everybody ought to be. We must be as inclusive as possible. No, some things in some areas we want to exclude. For instance, we lock our doors because we want to exclude other people, the people that we don't want to let in. That's okay. It is often okay to exclude people. And using the word inclusive as the thing that we should all be aiming for is quite dangerous.
Yeah, and also it's that mix of inclusion, as if it's absolutely correct, but also all the boundaries sort of melting as well. And so then you get, love has no age. And you think, wait a minute, little antennae flickering there.
Well, that's obviously a really dangerous thing, when people start saying things like that.
Any good questions?
Yeah, well, a lot of people want to talk about the commercialization, and I do worry about the lack of interest in boycotting countries like Qatar. I mean, it was so weak. People wanted to put on little bracelets, and then I think even the bracelets had to go because that was being too controversial. And do we not care? Do we not care about all these places where people really are risking their lives? Are we just
Uganda's the obvious one, isn't it? I mean, and there's a good connection with Pride, because we sponsored Pride, the Uganda Pride last year, and they're taking their lives in their hands, not metaphorically, literally, to have a Pride march or to do a Pride event. And they told, one of the reasons that we were wary of sponsoring it, we did send the money, and we did sponsor it, but we were worried that what happens if our logo is all over an event that gets raided by the police. And we thought, well, wait a minute, will that look like we encouraged them? And I had a conversation with the guy who's the chair of Uganda Pride, whose name I can't mention now because, of course,
exactly. We have to be careful. We can't even profile the people that we helped. No. And
I had the conversation with him, and I said, we're a bit wary about this. He said, basically said, get off your high horse. We're having the thing anyway. We're doing it. And this, that's the spirit that animated the original Pride. There was courage and sort of conviction, and now, I've looked, maybe, you never know, maybe after we say this, there'll be something in London Pride mentioning Uganda. I don't see any of the publicity. I don't see Stonewall doing anything. They backed a boycott and financial sanctions on all the key legislators 2 weeks after we had already written to the government to demand the same. But you would think in your day, still your day, but in 1971 or whatever, if people were being
it's all right, you don't have to keep rubbing it in.
It would be a big thing, surely, that people are being a death sentence in Uganda and they can't have a Pride. Well, that should be the theme of this year's Pride.
Well, what about Iran? What about Iran when if you are gay and you're caught, that you can get out of your heavy prison sentence or possibly even death sentence by going through a sex change? That is scandalous, isn't it? That is. But who do you see actually really complaining about that? Who do you see really complaining about that?
What can you do?
What can you do?
It's a difficult one, but I suppose that what we can do is constantly compare it's young people are responding to a homophobic culture by being sterilized. And although people claim there's no homophobia anymore in Britain, there is a residual homophobia that we saw at the Tavistock, when Hannah Barnes did her report. There was a large number of parents did not want to have a gay daughter or a gay son.
Yeah, no, I mean, you find little Iranian situations, especially in America, which is so religious. You get these very, very religious families that don't want a gay son. Oh my God, perish the thought. He's playing with Barbie dolls. Oh, we can't have that. We've had an example of that. We won't go into that, but in America, you see quite a lot of those. And then, oh no, the solution, it's clear, he's really a girl. And I mean, that is homophobia, pure and simple. And that there are people who cannot see that. I find just completely astonishing. Why can't they see that? Why can't they see that?
What I've never understood is why the trans movement decided to focus on kids. I mean, it's a minefield. And it's not going to be good for the trans movement. I mean, I don't have an animus against the trans movement in and of itself. They're playing with fire.
Well, they're playing with young gay and lesbian people, basically.
And gender non-conforming.
We know that. I mean, this gender non-conforming. I mean, for heaven's sake, we're all gender non-conforming, I hope, unless we're complete mindless people. I mean, everybody's gender non-conforming because we don't conform to Superman and Barbie doll stereotypes. Do you? Which? Well, I didn't think of, but I mean, so every sensible thinking person is gender non-conforming or non-binary. I called myself non-binary actually in my early 20s. I thought, yeah, that sounds cool. I don't want to be binary. Yeah, I'm non-binary. I did, but it wasn't
around in 1970.
It was. I discovered it. I discovered it in my. Yeah, it's true. It was a cool thing. And I thought, non-binary, no. I learned all about
rewriting history now.
No, I'm not. We learned about binary oppositions, and I thought, oh, I don't want to be one of those. I'm going to be in the middle. I'm non-binary. And this was all like, it was in the age of, being androgynous, and it was just nice. You didn't have to fit into models and stuff, and you could do what you want. And then, later we had David Bowie and all these people who would try out their androgynous sides, and it was great. I mean, even Eddie Izzard used to be fun, didn't he? I mean, he was fun. Yeah. It was fun, and people enjoyed that. And now, instead of it being
androgyny is cool. I mean, it's always been cool from men playing women and then drag, and androgyny is in and of itself.
It was playful. It was playful. It was fun, but it wasn't delusional. It didn't try and deny anything. It was always accepting what you are and playing with it. And that was just delicious. It was wonderful, and people could enjoy themselves. And now people are adopting all these crazy labels and putting themselves in boxes, and then saying, "I don't want to be in boxes," and yet they're boxing themselves in with all these labels. It's so paradoxical. I can't follow it.
One that gets me are the people who are in many boxes. So they're gender fluid, and they're demi boy, and then the demi girl, and it changes, and it can change within the day. I think, well, it would be just much easier to take those terms away rather than think, oh, am I demi boy now? Or am I demi girl now? And it feeds this self-obsession, this sort of constant sort of thinking about yourself, this sort of constant bubble of self-absorption.
I'm going to, this is very negative, Malcolm. Yes, so I'm going to ask you, it's too negative. Yes, I want to ask you, can you think of anything positive about Pride? Do you think there's any good comes out of it? All right, go on then, apart from you can have a party and see some interesting young chaps, but whatever. Yeah. What else? Is that it?
No, it definitely, if I always believe in thinking positively. And if you're looking at cup half full, it is amazing that the gay movement managed to go from 1970, where you were walking through and being hollered at, to today when 500,000, was it last year 500,000 in London, and this year probably 250,000 people can walk through the street, and the majority of people aren't offended and they think it's great, and they, like the Sydney Pride, they all have a great time. And gay people, LGBTQ people, are associated with a big fun party. That's the positive thing. So,
that's, you're being very, very charitable there, Malcolm. But I asked you to be. I mean, that's that's as good as it gets, I think. But
no, look. Also, I mean, there'll be some young gay people who go to the first Pride and think, oh my God, I didn't know there were so many people and they seem great fun and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we've got to be careful that we don't become utter, Scrooges, always looking on the negative side.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked you, and so it's an opportunity to have a party. But I mean, I really don't think anybody needs a party for all month long, do they? And that there is something completely mad about that, as if this particular group in society needs to have a whole month. I mean, as you said, who else needs a whole month? And why does it have to be a month? It seems to me it must be commercial reasons more than anything else.
But also, I think it's the same way that there's so many days of trans visibility and remembrance and all the rest of it. It's a way of putting in the calendar the political agenda. And so I walked through. I'm back in Glasgow now. I walked through King's Cross last night in London, and all over the place, giant pride flags and sort of pride celebrations and all the rest. So it is a kind of ideological imposition, and it doesn't work as well if you only do one day. It really works if it's up for a month.
Somebody's saying that it got political, but I think Pride was always political at the beginning, but it was political in a different way.
Yeah.
And then the commercialism we've discussed. And today, is it homophobic and misogynistic? Would you say that? I mean, do you think it's fair to say that Pride has become homophobic and misogynistic?
Well, it was misogynistic when in London in 2018 they threw those lesbians. I can't remember. Was it Angela Wilde you were saying?
Yeah, so in 2018, Angela Wilde with her and a group of lesbians went to the front of Pride, London Pride, and they with a big banner saying "Get the L out." That was the first time I'd heard that phrase, "Get the L out." I really didn't even understand what it meant, and I thought that's a silly phrase. Get the L out. Surely they mean put the L in. And it took me a while to understand what she was on about. And then I saw the backlash and realized that lesbians were being excluded from Pride and from the LGBTQ plus movement. And that's when I really, really became more intensely involved in this situation, because I thought, what a shocking thing. How can lesbians be being excluded from Pride? And then in 2020, you had the same thing happened in Lancaster. You had a group of lesbians who put up a few banners saying lesbians don't have penises or something, and then a group of people from within the Pride surrounded them and shouted and concealed their banners. And Jan Gooding, who was the chair of Stonewall at the time, said that was brilliant job. Absolutely the right initiative, the right instinct, she said at the time. And then I thought, that's really terrible that the chair of Stonewall is cheering that on. That was terrible.
I mean, I suppose there's a similarity between the original Pride, people taking to the streets to say something political, and Angela and Get the L Out, and Kelly J. Keane, and Let Women Speak. These, if you like, although they're, Let Women Speak isn't a gay thing, but nonetheless, they're closer to the original spirit of Pride than this big, amorphous, corporate, fat thing that Pride has become. I mean, it was brave when people walked in the original Pride, and when Kelly J. Keane goes to anywhere, it's brave, and when Angela and the Get the L Out. I mean, they're really taking their lives in their hands. Or I like, I don't know if you like him so much, Billboard Chris. I like people who they really put their lives on the line. Or they certainly. When I went to see Billboard Chris in Glasgow, and he motioned me over to come and stand with him.
Honestly,
I was shitting myself. I don't know how he does it every day. He goes to a different place, and these nut jobs can come and attack him. What's Kate Harris?
She's enjoying herself. Kate Harris is enjoying herself in the chat here. She says I only drink beer. I only drink beer. Terrible troll. Yeah. I don't know what we can do with her. But so I think if we sort of try to wind up here, what would we like to do going forward? Let's think. How would we like to change the world for the better, Malcolm? What would we like to change?
I mean, we're not going to. It's inconceivable that Pride is going to just become Gay Pride again, is it? I mean, it's just seems impossible. In the next decade, it's now so fused together. The most we can hope for, I suppose, is to have separate gay events, like the one we're having in Newcastle, LGB Alliance events. We're talking about August having an LGB sort of memory month. So we've got to rediscover our history and cherish it and nourish it and keep it from being rewritten. Challenge people at Tatchell when he lies about, gay history, and hopefully, I mean, I don't know what we do about Pride. I mean, it seems to be too far gone.
You would like to get rid of it?
No, I'm not. No, I wouldn't get rid of it. I just think it's too far gone to reform it to be what it should be. It has now completely morphed into this giant corporate.
Well, I think I probably would like to get rid of it, because I think it's doing more harm than good. And I think that what we should be focusing on is the terrible predicament in the rest of the world. And I think we should be thinking of initiatives, ways of supporting gays and lesbians in other parts of the world, and pressuring the government to do something about these countries, to put pressure on those countries to help people who are in situations. We have to realize how privileged we are. We're so privileged in this country, in both our countries. I'm here in Amsterdam, and you are in Glasgow, aren't you?
Yes, sunny Glasgow.
Scotland, the most progressive country in Europe. I think we better not go down that road there.
Well, we've got to be careful that we don't. It's not about banning things. It's just about asserting a separate, gay identity. And I mean, I don't think we want to come across as stopping people having fun. But what's interesting is, and that Uganda Pride thing was really interesting. When we started supporting Uganda Pride, the people who were organizing Pride said they were, a sort of flood of people saying that they wanted to support Uganda Pride because they didn't want us to be seen as the only sponsor. And when we complained to the government and asked for that specific list of people to be sanctioned, which was given to us by the Uganda gay organization, then 2 weeks later, Stonewall and everybody else asked for the same. And I think part of our job is just, if we weren't there, Stonewall and the other gay groups, or the other LGBT groups, would just ignore gay issues completely. But they feel now that they have to address it a little bit more than they were doing, because they can't be outflanked completely. And so, I bet you now they will do something. They will bring Uganda to the front because we complained about it. Not just here. If we do complain.
Well, I mean, I certainly would hope so. Dennis says Pride has had its day and let it gather dust and die. But Dennis, you think it's going to do that by itself? Without, I mean, I don't really see that happening, because there's so much money in it, and anything which has so much money in, is self-perpetuating. So I don't really see it dying out unless something is put in its place.
Well, there's a practical question. Should we be saying to government and councils and all the rest that they shouldn't be spending taxpayers' money on it?
Yeah, and instead they should be spending money to help gay and lesbian people and bisexual people who really need it, who are in dire circumstances in our own country as refugees or in other countries, and that would be a much more useful way to spend their money.
And that the corporates love it so much they can pay for the whole damn thing.
Well, it's been a great discussion, Malcolm. I hope that everybody at home has enjoyed it as well. We're going to be having.
And remember, we're going to say Menno's on the ball. He said, "Click please on the dollar symbol to donate."
Oh yes. The super something. Super chat. Yes, you can. You can donate on the super chat. We should have said it at the beginning. But I think that we are proud anyway to be LGB Alliance. We're proud with what we've revived of the gay rights movement, which we think was really in danger of being lost altogether. And I think we have revived it. We've torn up the script, as Kate Harris likes to say. because the scripts, don't forget.
Loads of other organisations. It's wonderful, isn't it, that almost every week there's a new organisation, either here or somewhere else. Lesbian Project, Gay Men's Network, Lesbian Labour. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was funny. One of our trolls, who used to be sort of really quite bolshy, has recently said there seem to be more of them all the time. Yeah, sounding quite worried about it.
Right.
But before LGB Alliance came along, people were able to say, even though it was nonsense, that if you didn't support self-ID, you were homophobic. And so we came along and said, no, sorry, but LGBT people say no. We say, no, you don't have to support gender identity. And that gave cover, I think, for a lot of people who secretly agreed with us. And we know this because we hear this every day, who agree with us, but who didn't dare say so, and more do dare say so. Yeah. And that's what we're proud of. We're proud of having done that. And we hope that you're all proud of being with us. And we hope to keep making you proud. And thank you for watching. And we'll be back soon with something even a bit less impromptu. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.